Hello, and welcome to First versus Last, the show where we look at the first and last installments of a movie or video game series. Today we're looking at the Wolverine trilogy. I'm your host, Vince, and today we've got Kimberly.
Hey.
And we've got Sam.
Hey.
You guys too old for this snicked?
Yikes.
Yikes. I do want to do Lethal Weapon so bad, but I feel like singing Mel Gibson's praises is not something you should do in 2017. So we are just... So I don't know what we're going to do there. So basically what we're going to be doing is talking about, I think, one of the weirdest trilogies in film, the Wolverine trilogy, starting with X-Men Origins Wolverine in 2009. And then we're going to be talking about the last film, Logan, which just came out this month. There will be a lot of spoilers, so this is your warning. If you haven't seen Logan, go see it. It's
First of all, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, it's great. It's a really great film. So go see it. But thank you for the download anyways. It's counted towards our numbers. So thank you there. But there will be spoilers. So just know that. Next month we'll be doing Fast and the Furious 8. There will also be spoilers. So just know this is a spoiler podcast. But we're going to be talking about just the first and last Wolverine movie. We're going to be kind of hitting on some X-Men movies as well, so spoilers abound. But if you've seen the first and third Wolverine movies and you haven't seen the other X-Men movies, like, what's also wrong with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a
What are you
weirdo.
doing?
You're a stone cold weirdo.
I guess it goes without saying there will be spoilers for X-Men Origins Wolverine as well. So let's just get that all out of the way. We will be talking a bit about Wolverine's tenure, Hugh Jackman's tenure as Wolverine starting in the year 2000. So, guys, X-Men Origins. Do we want to talk about that, or do we just talk about Hugh Jackman starting off right there?
Wherever we want to start. There's so much to take in.
Let's start with a personal connection. Sam, you've actually met Hugh Jackman.
I did. I met Hugh Jackman. I used to live and work in New York City, where they make paste picante sauce.
Get a rope.
And yeah, exactly. And I was basically I was a building manager of a theater, and this one day this documentary crew had rented out our space, and they were going to film a scene in it for their documentary, and that sounds like interesting enough, but then they were like, Hugh Jackman should be here any moment, and I was like, what? So
okay,
instead, yeah, exactly. So instead of hiding in my office and playing video games like I usually did during the day, I really made a point to be present throughout this day, waiting for Hugh Jackman to show up. So he's supposed to show up at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. comes and goes, and he doesn't show up. Now it's 10:30, and he doesn't show up. Now it's 11, and he's still not there. And they're getting really, 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 really nervous because they only had him for booked for 2 hours, and he's now an hour late. So suddenly, word starts kind of spreading around that he's on his way, that he's nearby, but that he's riding his bike and will need to shower first.
Like a motorcycle bike, or like just a normal bicycle?
When he pulled up, it was a normal bicycle with a little basket in the front and a bell, and streamers on the handle. And no, it really was a bicycle. He was riding his bicycle. And so I was like, excellent. I can make myself useful. And so I went and got the green room ready and cleaned out the bathroom really quickly so that he'd have a place to shower. He shows up drenched in sweat and stinking to high heaven, and still was the best looking, most charismatic person I've ever met in my life. He shook everybody's hand. He gave everybody a hug. He made a joke about the sweat. He said he was so sorry for being late, but life's not easy for big, important movie stars, which was really funny. He took what must have been a 7-second shower and then came out of the green room looking like he had just gone through 3 hours of hair and makeup and wardrobe. He's just really tall and really good looking and really funny. And so anyway, long story short, so now he's filming this documentary, and because I made a point to stick around, not only did I get to meet him and shake his hand, but I'm now in that documentary also as part of the audience for this weird little performance that he's giving. But yeah, so he's a really cool dude, and one of the things that I like most about these movies is that he obviously loves being Wolverine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he loves it. But the movies he's given,
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I read somewhere, I think AV Club maybe, that there's this, that I guess Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart both have said that Logan's going to be the last time that they do those characters. But then after saying that, they both have been like, well, I don't know. If it was the right movie, maybe.
Yeah.
And
it's not even like about like truckloads of money or anything. It's like more like...
No. Yeah, they just want to, like, I think they want to be in the Marvel movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think they just want to be in, like, the really good superhero movies.
Well, on that point, there was some rumors that Hugh Jackman was going to be in the original Captain America film, the one in the 40s, but just never pull out his claws and just say, here's my friend James, he's Canadian, like, and just call it a day.
Huh.
And that would have been pretty sweet. Like,
I would have liked that.
That would have gotten past the rights. Liev Schreiber could have been in it, too.
Oh.
Yeah, so let's talk about X-Men Origins Wolverine. I saw this movie on a date.
Oh, really?
Oh. She was primed and ready after that, I'm imagining.
So was she disappointed twice that night?
At least I was. I don't know.
So not only was it her idea to go see this movie that I did not want to see.
Fucking course it was.
Put a ring
it
on
has Ryan Reynolds, Liev Schreiber, Hugh Jackman, all shirtless at some point.
Well, you make a point. But so we were both so disappointed by how, spoiler alert, this movie's terrible.
We're not even going to build to it.
Yeah, she was so disappointed by how horrible this movie was that she insisted that we sneak into another movie to justify the cost of the ticket. And we snuck into the animated movie Monsters and Aliens.
With Seth Rogen as like a blue blob monster. I saw that in theaters.
Yeah, and it also was bad. And we'd only been dating for we'd known each other for a few years, but we'd only been dating for a couple of weeks. And so when that movie was over, we were just both like really bummed out and like, I think I'm going to go home. Yeah, I'm going to go my way too. Let's try and forget this and try this again next week when we don't go see bad movies.
So my story kind of goes into that similarly. It came out on my birthday. So I went to a midnight showing. And I was hammered drunk during the movie and fell asleep during the final climactic fight, which I don't think I missed much the first time. And that's the first time last time I'd seen it until this week when we watched it again. And I was so disappointed by it, although I really shouldn't have been because X-Men 3 sucked also. And then a week later, the Star Trek movie came out, the Star Trek reboot. And now I'm thinking maybe the reason I like the Star Trek reboot so much was because I'd gone through a string of disappointing films right before that. And that's actually where I met Kimberly, was that Star Trek film. So
no way!
Yeah, so we met a week after this abomination came out.
Is it... Let me ask you guys something, and you can disagree because this is a personal feeling that I have. Is it weird that in my head, the Star Trek movie feels like it only came out 5 or 6 years ago, but X-Men Origins Wolverine feels like it came out like 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I have that same feeling.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, no, that was way before this one. We were actually talking about that because we knew we saw the Star Trek movie together, but I didn't realize how closely it came out before then. Yeah. And I was like, no, this was like way before that.
See, if I recall, it was, because X-Men Origins Wolverine feels like a mid-2000s middling action film. And Star Trek, even though I guess Star Trek pulled off a full trilogy in between then and there, in the same amount of time, but it was like, I remember it was Wolverine, the next weekend was Star Trek, and the following weekend was Terminator Salvation, the Christian Bale.
Yikes.
Interesting.
So one of these movies is good.
Now, I enjoy notoriously bad movies. Like, I am somebody you should probably not gauge. Like, if she likes it, you would probably not like it. Like, that's probably how it should go. And there were definitely disappointments with this movie, but I really liked it.
Okay. So let's talk about that. So, do we need to talk about the plot? Because I'm really curious what you liked about it, Kim, beyond shirtlessness.
Well, so beyond just the hunk factor of multiple different hunks that I enjoy, I was so excited to see Gambit because I was a 90s kid who loved X-Men, who loved Rogue and Gambit were my favorite. I was disappointed because Gambit was completely underutilized. but I was excited that he was in it, and I feel like the casting was good. I feel like he was how I had imagined Gambit in my mind, like a younger Gambit than is usually drawn because I was younger, so I imagined a younger Gambit.
Taylor Kitsch, star of Battleship and John Carter of Mars.
Poor him.
Yeah, remember when Taylor Kitsch was in movies?
Yeah.
Poor him.
Poor him. But I was so excited to see that. I love watching a grown man, especially a really good-looking grown man, jump around like a cat. I don't know why. It just got to me. I just enjoyed it. Like, it was just a delight. It was like two of my favorite things, like a hunky guy and cats. And you just like, I don't know, it just worked.
It's so funny because Liev Schreiber is trying to be like serious acting and then jumping around like a cat.
But you know what? It worked for me.
Yeah. So I need to interrupt about Liev Schreiber really quickly. So there's a series of documentaries on Netflix that I think were produced by CNN that I'm not going to look up the actual name of because they're not good. But it's about the history of comic books. And you guys are like comic book nerds, right?
Yeah.
Kim, are you also a comic book nerd?
Yes.
I only recently, maybe about a year ago, got into comic books when Vince gave me a stack of the New 52 Batman.
Yeah, it was good.
And it's amazing, and I've kind of been sprouting out since then. But I never watched comic books. So anyway, I was watching this documentary, and Liev Schreiber is the host of it. And it came out around the time of X-Men Origins, and there's this moment where, so they're talking about the history of comic books, like all the way back from the 20s and 30s up till today, and they get to X-Men, and then they get to the 90s, and they start talking about comic book movies, and there's this moment where he's like, and that's when I finally got my chance to be immortalized on screen as blah, 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 and I was just like, hey man, that movie's horrible and nobody remembers you in it. Like, don't take pride in that film.
You're proven wrong now because I remember.
I guess I am.
So,
but yeah, but okay, cool. So I sort of get what Kim likes out of it. What do you like this film, Vince, or no?
I think its first act is actually pretty solid. Like,
yeah. I think the opening credits are amazing and could have been like 4 movies when they're fighting through all those different wars.
Yeah, they're Canadians fighting in American wars, but okay.
Yeah.
Which is a little bizarre, but like I think the kid at the beginning in the 1845 sequence is bad, you know, with playing young Wolverine. And when he finds out his claws, so he was 1845, and I guess spoiler alert for Logan, he dies. I guess he almost was about to be 200 years old. Poor guy. He didn't hit his bicentennial.
Yeah, just missed it.
Just missed it. But I think its first act is fine. I think Ryan Reynolds as Wade Wilson is perfectly serviceable and fun with the sword stuff. Agent X or whatever that dude, that was cool. There was 2 gun guys. Will.i.am is always given a lot of grief for being in this movie. He's one of the better parts of it.
Yeah.
Like, if we're being perfectly honest, he's not bad. He's just like, I'm going to wear a cowboy hat and have Nightcrawler powers, and that's what I'm going to do.
I'm into it. I like the jumping around where they collect the team, you know, where they sort of like reconnect. Like it shows like at the beginning, of course, like how they were on these missions together and Wolverine was like, this is unethical, I'm out, you know, which made me love him even more.
It's weird watching him be the cool level-headed one, though.
Yeah, and I think, like watching, because in every other X-Men movie, Wolverine is sort of the loose cannon, you know, like fly off the handle kind of guy. And when you see him with his brother, who's hotter and taller than him, and
Liev Schreiber hotter than Hugh Jackman?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yikes.
For me, anyways.
Hot take.
Yeah. And his brother is the crazy one, and he's like the voice of reason. I'm like, oh wow, he's really a fucked up guy. Like, if Wolverine is telling you to calm down.
Yeah, you've crossed a line. Will one of you guys? So I feel like we need to talk about the plot of the movie because that's where most of my hangups are. But I don't want to summarize it because I don't feel like I can.
Okay, so it starts off with Wolverine as a baby Wolverine in 1845. Then suddenly him and his brother, who's Sabretooth, Liev Schreiber, they go and they fight in every American war through Vietnam.
Hang on. Before that, Wolverine kills his father, who he didn't know he was his father.
Yeah.
Right, and they didn't know that they were brothers until that moment when he kills his father, and his father says, "I'm your father," which means that you two are brothers.
Exactly.
Yeah. And his
that's
last
also
name is
the
like
same
Thomas
moment-
Logan or something, so that's how he gets the Logan name. But then he's also his dad Howlett was killed by his real dad was killed by his fake dad. I don't know.
And that's also so. In about 30 seconds of screen time, we learn that this little kid is Wolverine because he has bone claws, and that the person he thinks his dad is. The person who he thinks is his dad is now dead, murdered in front of him. Then he murders the guy who turns out to be is his real dad, and then he discovers he has a brother, and then he runs away forever. And that all happens in about 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Yes,
with a real bad kid actor. Sorry. Cool. So they fight they fight in every American war through Vietnam. Liev Schreiber is kind of a rapist, and
that really upset me.
Kind of. He's like, he's like
what?
going to rape that woman, and then Wolverine's like, "Hey man, don't."
Well, I was thinking from like the language of film, like I don't know if it's just because I Watchmen came out as a film right around this time, or like I'm just like, and it's very much a Watchmen scene of like if you just have like a burning village and then a bad American throwing a Vietnamese woman into a shack, you're like, oh, he's gonna rape her. Like that's the language of film. That's like, oh, this is a rape that's about to happen.
Yeah. If you pick up a screaming woman and throw her into a room or onto a bed, and then somebody says, "No, stop," you're about to rape that person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, because I was like, I picked up on these cues. I was drunk as a skunk, and I picked up on these cues. So,
it's bad.
So then Wolverine is, I guess, him and Wolverine are bros. So they put him up in a firing squad, which doesn't work because they both have healing powers. Mm-hmm. Then Stryker, played by Brian Cox in X-Men 2, recruits all of these other mutants to like go and have this special thing where they're gonna steal adamantium. Then Wolverine quits because reasons. And
because they were going to kill innocent people, and he was like,
"Yeah, they were going to kill."
That's right.
They were going to kill that African village.
Yeah, and he's like, "No, I'm not down for this kind of shit." Like,
so 6 years later, he's living in the woods. He's grown a beard.
Yes, he probably smells like leather and sawdust.
Yes, he's wearing a leather coat. He's got a girlfriend.
And that, just to interrupt for a second, is when he hits peak attractiveness for me.
Oh, for sure.
His long hair is really good looking in this movie. Yeah. I don't know. He's pretty hot in Logan, though. He's really hot in Logan.
Yeah, the long hair, the beard, and the flannel, and that just big brown leather belt. That's
70s jeans. I mean, it looks good. All of it.
Yes, that is a good look for him. He, yes.
He's very good looking in Days of Future Past when he's wearing his 70s clothes again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's an underrated decade, I think, as far as men's clothing goes.
So
anyway,
so he's got his girlfriend, and then he's working as like a lumberjack or in the mines or something, and then his girlfriend is killed by Sabretooth. So then by Liev Schreiber. So then Wolverine's like, I got to kill Liev Schreiber. So then he asks Stryker to give him adamantium.
Well, it's not exactly. Like, Stryker says, I can help you get back at him. Here, buddy, let me help you out here.
And so then he gets his adamantium. Meanwhile, Liev Schreiber is killing everybody associated with the team. So they're killing, I cannot remember who Dominic Monaghan played, either Merry or Pippin, one of the hobbits from...
Yeah, who could, like, control the electricity and things like that.
He played one of those hobbits from Lost.
The one, the hobbits that was being taken to Isengard, yes.
Yeah.
So he played one of those. He was in this movie. Ryan Reynolds got killed off screen, which I'm like,
yeah. Well, I know like a lot of like hardcore comic book fans were so excited for the appearance of Deadpool, like so excited. Finally, Deadpool's gonna be here. And then it was almost like a real fuck you. It was like worse than even not putting him in a movie, being like, we're just gonna mishandle him so badly that it's worse than not putting him in a movie.
Which is so funny that they mishandled him, and Deadpool is the highest grossing X-Men movie by $100 million.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Comic book nerds fucking love Deadpool.
It's like Deadpool made like 330 domestically, and the next one after that is, I think, X-Men Days of Future Past for like 230. Like, it's far and away higher.
I will say, though, if you've ever been to any kind of Comic-Con, though, like, the Deadpool people are the fucking worst. Like, they are so obnoxious. Like, nobody likes you, Deadpool. Like, we like the character. We don't like...
You don't like seven
the jackasses walking around Comic-Con thinking they're so fucking funny.
You don't like seven dudes in spandex humping everybody in line?
No.
Okay.
Not so much.
Well, to each their own.
Yeah. I mean, I do like it when they bring a boombox and they get into, like, dance battles with other people. That's fine. You can do that, but, like, don't do the other stuff.
So Liev Schreiber's murdered everybody. Wolverine has now adamantium, but somehow while he's underwater, which is the scene we've seen from, like, 3 previous X-Men movies, He somehow hears that Stryker is going to betray him, and he's like, "Fuck that!" And then he murders everybody, and then runs out naked into the woods. Which, Kimberly, you have a story about that.
Yeah, actually, so for that scene, he runs around naked, killing everybody. So apparently, after this movie wrapped, the director or producer, I don't remember who,
Director Gavin Hood,
said, "Hey, I have a little gift for you." To Hugh Jackman, and he was like, "Oh yeah," and he opened it, and it was all of the footage where his dong was showing because he refused to wear anything, and so he just has like every single cut of when his dick was out.
And did the director give him that just for safekeeping, so that this won't end up on the internet, or
no? I think it was just funny. He was just like, "Look, it's your dick." Ah.
Hey man, we all saw your dick.
I'm sure it's amazing.
Well, I'm sure it is too. That's
do we want to talk about Wolverine's dick, or do we want to space that out?
I mean, while we're on the topic, right?
Look, if you're on Wolverine's dick, you got to stay on Wolverine's
I've got a lot to say about Wolverine's dick. So, right after those articles sort of surfacing on the internet, Jezebel did an article, which, Jezebel's gone down lately. I haven't been checking it, but I followed it on Facebook and it showed up. And so they said, well, what is the fan theory on whether Wolverine is circumcised or not circumcised? What do comic book people say? What are our experts saying about this? And so some people were saying, well, he is circumcised because it happened before the adamantium, and even though he did have superhuman healing. Because he's a
Canadian boy in the 1830s, 1840s.
Right.
So
it was probably, but, his superhuman healing didn't kick in till later, and so he might have been
does that
circumcised,
cure old
whatever.
Scars?
Right. But then somebody else was like, well, no, because in the new movie, Logan, which we're jumping ahead, he it does flashbacks and it shows him getting injured and then regenerating much faster. So they were like, yeah. So the general consensus on the internet is that Wolverine is uncircumcised.
So then that all makes sense to me, but my question then is can Wolverine have surgery? Can he have his wisdom teeth removed? Can he have braces?
Well, that was my question, because they were cut his head off, seemed to be the strategy of, because Liev Schreiber.
Oh my god, you guys, they said cut his head off about 19 different characters in this movie.
Yeah, that's how you kill people. That you kill Deadpool by cutting his head off. You kill.
That's how you kill Highlanders.
Yeah.
But then the question is, and I've always wondered this too, is if you cut Wolverine's head off, or even his finger off, does his finger grow into a whole other Wolverine?
No.
Oh,
No.
Because he would grow a whole new finger back.
Right.
But the other fingers...
But the finger wouldn't grow into a...
No, he's not like a fucking, lizard. I don't... Well, it's
he's
like
not
a lizard
earthworm.
thing. Well, no, but the lizard thing, right? So earthworm versus lizard. So the lizard, the tail will keep moving to distract the predator, and they'll grow a new tail, but the tail eventually will just kind of, flop off into nothing.
Right.
I feel like that's how it is for Wolverine.
So if you cut off his head, what part grows back?
I feel like everything could grow back.
The head grows a body back?
Yeah.
But the body does not grow a
and
head
the body, because the head is where the brain is.
Okay.
Right? I mean, that's my
I mean, are you asking me where your brain is?
Wolverine did get vapor... I mean, this is bullshit, because Wolverine in the comics did get vaporized down to one atom, and somehow...
Was able to come back?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So where were we plot-wise here?
So he's murdered everybody. He's naked. He goes and hangs out with a farm family, and then they're subsequently murdered. And he does not seem to care at all, because he immediately just goes into driving motorcycle, helicopter fight, killing former teammates. So he does that, and then he somehow finds... And then he goes to Gambit, or he goes to... Is this when he goes to Will.i.am?
Yeah, and he talks to the Blob, and he talks to Gambit. Or, no, not Gambit. He talks to...
he talks to the Blob, and then the Blob tells him to go find Gambit.
Yeah, because he's the only one who escaped from the place where Stryker keeps all the other mutants.
Because Gambit is apparently Sean Connery from The Rock.
Yeah.
And then...
What?
You can only get in if you find the person that escaped. That's the only way to get back in. And then that's when he finds out that Stryker and Liev Schreiber are working together and always have been. And then he goes to that island and finds out that the girlfriend was also in on the fakery for Wolverine, which seems overly complicated to me, that they needed to fake her death to prompt Wolverine to then Stryker say, I could help you by giving him this experimental surgery, to then reasons. I don't know. And then Wolverine, oh yeah, by the way, is known as Weapon X. I don't know if you've ever known that. Based on previous things, he's we haven't mentioned that. He's Weapon X, which is apparently Weapon 10, and so they've got Weapon 11.
That might be my favorite moment in the movie, actually, when he's like, yes, Weapon X, and then the guy's like, Weapon what? And he goes, X. It means 10, guys. Come on.
Get it together.
I'm not being an arch villain in a comic book movie. I'm saying he's number 10. Okay, it's fine. Relax.
And the whole connection with Weapon X and Professor X is just coincidental.
See, and I feel like that's also what lent it to make it feel more like a 90s movie, because I feel like the 90s is when everything was like X and, like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Extreme!
Yes!
And that's why I think X-Men Apocalypse works for me, because X-Men Apocalypse is like, we are an 80s movie. We have people shooting shiny colors at other shiny colors. Sorry, Sam.
No, you're fine, I'm loving this. So he finds Gambit.
Yeah. Gambit helps him break onto Stryker's Island, which is not Rikers Island. It's outside of Philly, I think, somewhere outside of Pennsylvania.
It's 3 Mile Island, right?
Is it? It might be.
They say somebody says that it's hiding in plain sight at 3 Mile Island.
Okay.
And then when the end of the movie happens, that's the meltdown of 3 Mile Island.
Oh, which actually is that a real event in '79?
Which happened in real life at that time. So again, like in X-Men First Class, they're kind of using history and then blaming it on the mutants.
Oh, so this movie takes place in '79. I don't know if I said that, by the way.
Yeah.
So interesting. Thank you for history lesson. Bum, bum, bum. So what after that happens is that we find out that 10 mutants have donated their DNA to create Weapon 11, which is Deadpool. He's made of the pool of dead people, which not all of them are dead because he has Cyclops powers, because Cyclops is just a random kid that's been kidnapped along with Emma Frost.
I completely forgot that Cyclops is in this movie. I saw this movie a week ago, and I completely forgot that he's in this movie. Until you just said that.
But in this movie, he has... I'm not even going to talk about the continuity and how this movie doesn't... we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that later, because it makes me mad. The continuity of how this... I don't think this movie's in canon, but okay. So then, all these kids... So Deadpool, made of the pool of dead, shirtless Ryan Reynolds, mouth sewn shut, because everybody loves Deadpool, the classic hero that doesn't talk.
But I thought that was a funny thing, because like Stryker had always said like his smart assness annoyed him.
You've got a mouth, because he's the merc with a mouth.
Yeah. So like I thought it was like Stryker exercising his abusing his authority.
Yes.
In funny ways.
So then they fight. Somehow Sabretooth shows up. They find out the girlfriend betrayed Wolverine, and then somehow Sabretooth kills the girlfriend. And then Wolverine's like, I'm going to kill you. But then they team up, because they're brothers, to fight Deadpool on the top of a silo. And then Deadpool is killed by his head getting cut off. And it's a really cool fight sequence, actually, despite it being like green screen to hell. It's like Wolverine climbs to the top of that silo, and he's like, haha, I escaped. And then Deadpool just Nightcrawler's up there, and he's like, oh, shit. And and that's a pretty cool sequence, except for the fact that like Deadpool like uses Cyclops powers, which then like sears his skin to give him his domino eyes that Deadpool has. It's really a fuck you to Deadpool fans.
It really is.
But Liev Schreiber and Wolverine fight together back to back, and that's pretty cool. And Deadpool has swords that come out of his hands.
Yeah, instead of the Wolverine claws.
Yeah, because
he always had swords.
Yeah, so that's fine. Then Sabretooth runs away. And then Wolverine spends a little last moment with his dead girlfriend. She's dying, and then they tell Stryker to go walk out in the forest until his feet bleed. And the movie pretty much ends, except for, what is it? Professor X, who can stand but is bald, comes and recruits all the kids.
Well, and also Wolverine gets shot in the head with an adamantium bullet, and his memory's erased.
Yes, because as we
yeah.
But somehow, I thought this was because we watched Logan first. It's like,
and then he was like, I'm going to kill myself with this one adamantium bullet. When he got like shot like point blank range, like multiple times in the skull in this first movie, I'm like, but then I also thought, you know what might be the cause of that is because now he's deteriorated. Yeah. He's not able to regenerate.
But then that makes me question, just jumping ahead to Logan, X-24 also gets shot in the head with an adamantium bullet with a comically large gun. and half his head blows up, I think he's probably still alive.
Yeah, he could bring him back. We could bring him back.
So,
and I've got to say, okay, no, go ahead, Sam.
No, you go ahead.
Because I was jumping forward if we're talking about X-24, having a younger, hotter Wolverine fight an older, more grizzled Wolverine, it was good.
Good. I'm glad.
I'm
glad. So here's my question about this movie for you two. So, like I said, at the time, I didn't know anything about comic books. I actually had not ever seen the X-Men cartoon.
What?
I was not allowed to watch that sort of thing when I was a little kid.
Sam's a little younger than us.
Yeah.
I'm just a very little bit younger than you, but you guys both look a lot better than me, so it all works out.
But none of us look as good as Hugh Jackman.
That's the goddamn truth. So when I went and saw this movie, so here's like my big thesis statement. So like I didn't know about comic books. I didn't really watch the comic cartoons. But I knew that that comics were weird and that they had different continuities and different authors could do different things and that sometimes there were alternate universes or what if stories and things like that. So like continuity has never really been a thing that I like get really hung up on, right? But
I also feel like it gets to a certain point with certain comics where it's like they bring such bullshit reasons to like bring characters back from the dead or like like they can undo anything. So literally like no matter how somebody died, like they'll bring somebody back from the dead. They can write their way out of any corner you think that they've written themselves into.
Well, sure.
I mean, but to Kimberly's point, like. Mm-hmm. But if you do something stupid, as long as you write a good story afterwards, like it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
Like one of the things like in comics they were like you cannot bring Captain America's partner Bucky back from the dead. You can't fucking do it. And it was like for 70 years he was dead. And they bring him back in the Winter Soldier and it's like this is stupid. This is going to be stupid. It's a great story. They make Captain America the Winter Soldier movie out of it. People
so
love
that's
it.
That's kind of my point, Vince, is that and kind of to both of your points, like if you're going to bring somebody back from the dead, I imagine you're doing it for a reason so that we can get to this other part of the story, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But what do you guys, so what do you guys think is the purpose of X-Men Origins Wolverine?
Okay, so the movies originated, they were going to have multiple Origins films.
Right. So they were kind of doing like the backwards of what Marvel did. Like they had their group movies and then they were going to do X-Men Origins, Wolverine and Storm and Gambit and everybody, and they were all going to have their solo
X-Men
movies.
Origins Magneto was the next one on the table. And that became First Class. That's what happened there. They were going to have like solo films is what they kind of had thought they were going to branch out to. I don't know what it's trying to accomplish. It feels like it's spinning its wheels a little. Like they got a lot of success with X1 and 2, and Last Stand kind of shit the bed. And then 3 years later, let's make another X-Men movie.
Because my biggest complaint about this movie, and I mean I could go through and nitpick about just about every scene of this film, but my big complaint is that. So, like, you sit down and you're like, oh, hey, we're going to learn about this character that we know and love, and we're going to have some questions answered and some mysteries solved, and it's going to be great. And that does more or less happen. Like, we learn about him being a child in Canada, we learn about him fighting in wars, about his brother, and how he got the adamantium and everything. But the problem for me is that at the end of the movie, there's no one living that still knows that story because Wolverine's memory is erased.
Right.
But I think it was really more like to tell the audience and the people who might be seeing future films, like getting a sense of who Wolverine is and why he's such an asshole and he's such a loner. Yeah.
That's exactly my point though, Kim, because when he gets his memory erased at the end of the movie, people listening might not know this, but I'm an actor, I guess. I have degrees in acting. And as an actor, like thinking from a character perspective, if your memory is erased, that means that none of the stuff that happened before actually affects your behavior, right?
Well, but see, so for me, like as a therapist, I'm thinking your memory's been erased. You don't have any sense, but the feelings are still under there. Like your memories may not be attached to the feelings. Like your feelings are not born always from memories. Like so, yeah. He's still going to be a loner asshole who doesn't trust anybody, and his like intense distrust of people is intensified because he can't trust his own memory bank. Like he doesn't know where he comes from or what's happening, and so he has this even more intensified like I'm not trusting anyone.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with that. But I feel like so I guess what I'm saying is like, what do we get out of this movie aside from biographical specifics that actually don't matter anymore, that we don't get from the first X-Men movie, when we learn that he's a loner and he doesn't really know what happened in his past and he's really confused and mistrustful? Like what storytelling does this movie accomplish?
Because like I think like the big mystery, and even in the comics hadn't explained up until like the early 2000s how Wolverine got his powers and how he got his claws and what Weapon X was. Like I mean, you know, they show like his escape. And like that's pretty much where his memories start, is his escape. In the movies, even in the first three, they keep doing that Alkali Lake scene of him bursting out. So I think what we were promised going into this movie was we're going to see what led up to him being either captured or something with the government putting him in that program. And I think they probably thought it was very novel to idea that Wolverine elected to do it. And just didn't remember to do it. You know, didn't remember it. Because the previous three movies was like, the government fucked me, and that's why I have these claws. And in this movie, he chooses to undergo the procedure.
Under, like, extreme manipulation.
Right. But Sam,
that's interesting. That's an interesting point, because I guess then we, the audience, are just always going to be a couple of steps ahead of him and understanding his behavior a little bit more than he even does.
Right. And then,
okay, that's interesting.
So I mean, it's an ill-conceived mid-2000s movie made in 2009. Like that's what it is, and it didn't really know what its plot. It may have served better to have done the surgery in the first act, and then let him be like without memory.
So that's you kind of just hit on something that I've been thinking. Like, so much happens in this movie that I honestly wish that it had been made now as a Netflix series. Like, the first 3 episodes can be childhood through Vietnam. Then we've got an episode about getting the adamantium. Then we've got an episode about like what's going on with Deadpool for a minute. Like I just like, if you'll never hear me say this about another movie ever again, because I love short movies, but if this movie was 10 hours long, it would be better.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like a lot of it's like of no consequence, or you don't get you don't get much of like Wolverine's character from this movie.
Well, and then that's the other thing, Vince, no consequence. Like, there are 2 separate characters we're told are dead at points in this movie who then come back to life at the end, and then they both die again. So it's like, who even cares about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it also, like, introduces, or it doesn't necessarily introduce, but it emphasizes and sort of underscores how mutants are manipulated and exploited by, you know, certain, you know, like people who are powerful or rich or government entities. And I think that's definitely part of, like, the X-Men canon where, you know, that's like a recurring theme, and it's something that helps kind of bring that home even more, you know.
I'm glad you said that, Kim, because something that dogged me after the first time I saw this movie that I didn't really solve within myself until the second time I saw it about a week ago, I didn't really know that a piece of art, like a movie or a TV show or something, could make you feel bad. What am I trying to say? That it could make you feel bad on purpose. You know what I mean? Like the point of this movie might be for you to leave being like, man, the government, that's messed up, and like that was really messed up, and I can't believe that they showed that or sewed that guy's mouth shut, and like those bad feelings that the movie gave me in 2009 translated into me thinking this was a bad movie. It is still a bad movie, but it is, like you say, really successful at making you have those like really super negative feelings about like abuse and extortion and people being taken advantage of.
And I think that definitely carries through in Logan, like in the new movie for sure, where you have that feeling where you're like, oh my God, what the fuck, man?
So we'll talk about Logan in just a second, but are we about ready to close the book on X-Men Origins Wolverine?
Yes.
All right.
I am.
So let's close the book. We're gonna do a bit of a thing. Oh, I did have like one more factoid. Did you know who wrote X-Men Origins Wolverine, the screenplay?
Tony Award-winning playwright Tracy Letts.
No, David Benioff, Game of Thrones showrunner.
What?
2 years before Game of Thrones started.
Okay, so now I'm even more right about that this should have been a television show because,
exactly.
There's some crazy twist every 20 minutes,
right,
which is how television is supposed to work. No one is ever really dead. We learn so much, and then the ending kind of doesn't matter because there's still going to be more movies after this. Right. Wow, that's crazy. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that, Vince.
So let's go into an interlude here. So in between this movie made in 2009, and Logan, which was made in 2017, we had a whole X-Men prequel trilogy: First Class, Days of Future Past, and Apocalypse. Hugh Jackman actually played a fairly large role in Days of Future Past because they time traveled back to his 1972 self where he had bone claws. And then we also had the Wolverine in 2013, which had up until this point was the farthest point we'd seen in the X-Men continuity, which I liked pretty well. We did learn that Wolverine was also at either Hiroshima or Nagasaki when the bombs were dropped. So he jumped somehow from being at D-Day to go into the Pacific Front. I don't know if that was common or not.
Ooh, I actually have a question about that, Vince. For both of you, actually. Do you guys think that Logan and whatever his brother's name, Liev Schreiber, do you guys think that they kept getting drafted into wars, or do you think they were like, hey, this is a perfect place for us, let's just keep signing up?
I think definitely Liev Schreiber was like, let's go fucking kill people, with a purpose that it's socially acceptable for us to kill people.
Yeah,
right.
And then Wolverine just was along for the ride.
Okay, I buy that.
I that's my kind of feeling is what happened there. So Hugh Jackman ended up being in all 9 X-Men movies, all 6 X-Men movies, and then all 3 Wolverine movies. Although he had a limited role in both First Class and Apocalypse. For the Wolverine, he ended up getting his director from one of his favorite movies he ever worked on, Kate and Leopold, to direct it. Who also James Mangold, who also directed 3:10 to Yuma, which I had previously called the best Western I'd seen in the last 10 years until Logan. He also directed Walk the Line, The Wolverine, and this. I also learned that apparently Hugh Jackman got Liev Schreiber to be in X-Men Origins Wolverine because they had such a fun time working on Kate and Leopold together. So, so it strikes me that maybe Hugh Jackman had a fucking blast on Kate and Leopold.
How could you not have?
Because he got his director and actor friends from that movie to be in other things, which I really enjoy.
You can say a lot of things about Hugh Jackman, I guess. They'll all be positive, the things that you say about him. But he is always game for whatever's going on. He is 100% on board and he's having a blast. That's my favorite thing about him. And watching all of this. So I watched all 3 of these movies, Origins, The Wolverine, and Logan in the last
trilogy week. Titles. Worst title of trilogies to put in movies together, but
awful. But I've watched all 3 of those in the last week, and I'm like, I need more Hugh Jackman in my life, you guys. Yes. I gotta seek this guy out.
Yeah. So he's done with Wolverine, but you can go see Swordfish on your own time. But what we kind of learned from these Wolverine movies, and kind of doing some research on here. Apparently, Wolverine Origins was originally supposed to be an R-rated film, and Hugh Jackman's like, no, we need to have a PG-13 movie to bring in the audiences. And 8 years later, he did not seem to mind as much with doing Logan, which is now the second R-rated X-Men movie after Deadpool. The 5th highest grossing of all the X-Men movies, but will soon be eclipsing whatever's above it, and I can't remember what it was. I think Last Stand is actually the 2nd highest grossing film in the series. So we are going to be moving on into Logan right now. So let's just start with this movie. Sam or Kimberly, do you have thoughts about Logan?
I was so excited to see, I don't know why, I I don't know. I'm not even going to try to explain it, but I don't know why having such a young girl be so like viciously brutal and like raw. And I think she just did an incredible job playing the part, but also like seeing her be like such a badass, and also like really vulnerable. Like it was really incredible. I thought that was a really like moving and touching and empowering, I don't know, just experience watching her on screen.
I completely agree. Even as an adult male, it was really empowering to see this young woman be like, I am not taking your shit from day
Yes,
one. Like,
exactly.
like, she's like, you can either come correct or you can get your head cut off. These are your two options, okay?
She
like,
just walks out of there with her little backpack and just murders all of those Reavers. And then later, when like she just decided not to talk for the whole movie, even though she could, she's that much of a badass. And then what was the line? You've used this on me when we had fights since we've seen Logan. It was something like, he's like, everybody always gets killed around me, so you don't want nothing about me. And she's like,
or no, Logan said, you know, people who I care about end up getting hurt. And so she said, well, then I'll be just fine. And I was like, yes, girl. She's nailed it. Ooh. Arrow to the heart.
I was,
Daphne
I
Keane
was
is her name, by the
really,
way.
I'm sorry, Vince, say that again?
Daphne Keane is her name, by the way.
Yeah, she was absolutely terrific. And I even like those moments, Kim, where like she would do something and not really so much during the fight scenes, but just like, I don't know, she would like do something and Wolverine would look at her like, damn, you're hardcore.
Yeah.
Like, yikes, man. Like, that was intense. I was really surprised, and tell me if you guys had this same feeling, but I was really surprised at how like political this movie was in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, X-Men have always been political, but I mean, and then it turned from being about mutants being a metaphor for racism to being a metaphor for homophobia, and now it's changed again, which is really interesting to me.
Well, and not even just like the underlying allegory that we all kind of know about and has never really been too subtle, but like in this movie they talk about like water rights and Americans drinking corn syrup and then we have, and this is like not subtle at all, but then we have the US government, which is all white men with guns, chasing down and murdering children that come from Mexico. Like it's like really taken some shots, and this is definitely not intentional, and I don't even know how many people who saw the movie will remember this. I only remember it because they talked about it on the AV Club, but the bad guy who's chasing them the entire time, his name is Donald.
Yeah. Donald. Yeah, his name is Donald. I don't know anybody's name in this movie other than Laura, Charles, and Logan. I don't know anybody else's names. I don't know the farm family they stayed with. I love this movie. I don't know anybody's names. Yeah, Donald. That guy was great. Basically, I thought that was like, how is this not Draco Malfoy's job? Like that was his role to lose. Like
that would have been interesting casting. Yeah,
Tom Felton. Like, yeah, I'm just seeing this. Like, okay, it's a blonde guy, like blonde little shit guy. He was really good. Everybody was really good. The other like cool little futurism thing in there, the movie, because this movie takes place in 2029, was the driverless 18-wheelers.
Which, driverless trucks, yeah.
Which are like really like going to be like the interesting thing that like may fuck the American economy like more than anything, in a good way, but also like in a completely different way. I don't know if you read articles about this, Sam. Have you?
No, I feel like I know what the articles would say, but tell me a little about that. Because
so 18-wheelers are like the highest paying non-college graduate jobs.
Yeah, my grandfather drove an 18-wheeler for 25 years.
Right. And what they do, so 18-wheeler drives, I mean, they're great paying jobs. You don't necessarily need like a high education, so they're good jobs that if they become autonomous. And what people are thinking is maybe like one person driving a car watching a fleet of 6 driverless 18-wheelers, then these cars run faster. They don't have to stop to sleep nearly as often because you have one person. They don't stop to pee, so all the rest stops. And all the little economies down around rest stops, I know in Texas, probably in Kentucky also, like they go the way of like towns did when Route 66 was born. Like so it fucks all these like small towns. Like it helps, like in the aggregate, but it also like in the immediate fucks a lot of like things that are existing.
Which is like, that's just how automation works.
Right,
That
exactly.
Like, it's good long term, but it's really shitty short term.
Right. And so it's really just interesting to see that those are just kind of like hiding out in this movie, and Wolverine is like an old man just talking about how much he doesn't fucking like them and doesn't trust them. And one ends up running him off the road. It's just interesting to me to see in that movie. Like, nobody's talking about this shit at all. Especially not in a mainstream Hollywood movie. And there it is. Nobody's talking about a lot of the stuff in this movie. And this movie's doing. But this movie, moving off of that, the thing that I really loved about it was just a classic fucking Western. Although it was set in 2029. Like I'm just watching this and I'm like, wow, it's basically just, if you put like them on horses, they're running from dudes dressed in black. Like the whole movie, just trying to get across the country. Families are taking them in and then immediately murdered. Like that one family took them in and I'm like, they're either going to be murdered now or like right after.
And it's so funny because the exact same thing happens in X-Men Origins, where he stumbles upon kind of a sad family out in the middle of nowhere. They take him in, they're outrageously kind to him, and then they're immediately murdered.
Right.
But one of these families, we, the audience, really care about, and then the other family, we immediately recognize as a plot device and do not care about them at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, do you guys, and there are a couple of other little mirroring things between the first and last of these three movies.
Yes.
Like somebody in X-Men Origins says that they're gonna die by being impaled.
Yeah, Wolverine specifically says that.
Yeah, and then that's how Wolverine dies. Do you guys think that is on purpose, or do you think it's on purpose the way that like Star Wars copies itself on purpose, or do you think it's accidental the way that Star Wars copies itself accidentally sometimes because they're bored and don't have any ideas?
Okay, so I was going to use this as a trivia segment of which movie is
Oh
this?
no, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So let's just go into it. Which movie has Logan running away with a bunch of scared kids? Both of them. Which movie has a farm family, which we just said, taking Logan in and then is immediately murdered? What movie has a bad guy mute secret weapon with Wolverine's genetic powers, and then he fights that monster back to back with another person with Wolverine's powers?
Wow.
Which movie has Wolverine fighting this mute secret weapon that just has a number +1 more than him? The answer is either Weapon X and then Weapon 11, or X-23 and X-24.
Wow.
Wow.
But I think that goes exactly to the point that we were all trying to make earlier, where it's like you can do whatever you want in comic books and in movies or whatever, but if it doesn't serve a point, it's boring and awful.
Well, so here's something. Patrick Stewart was killed in X-Men: The Last Stand, X-Men 3, 2006. Yes. Straight up killed, murdered, whatever. He somehow in the
he got exploded, right?
He got exploded. That's right.
He got exploded.
At the end, there was a brain dead guy in Moira McTaggart's office that Professor X put his brain into, but that does not mean he looks like Patrick Stewart. Yet somehow Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen just show up at the end of Wolverine, or The Wolverine, the second Wolverine movie. No questions asked. Why is he still alive? Shh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
But see, that shit does not bother me at all.
Exactly. It bothers me more that like Cyclops is in high school in both 79 and 83, and he has glasses in the first scene, but not glasses in X-Men Apocalypse. And it bothers me that Patrick Stewart is walking around but bald in 79, but then has hair in 83. Professor X that has hair and is in a wheelchair. You know, like that stuff bothers me. The fact that Patrick Stewart's still alive, I don't care about because it's exceptionally well done. And so moving on to, I think this is Patrick Stewart's best performance of all these X-Men movies.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
So
Absolutely.
I was thinking about this though. I'm like, is there any other movie that really shows how much Professor X matters to Wolverine? Like I don't like they mention like I took you in, but I don't ever get the sense. Maybe X-Men, maybe Days of Future Past is the only one where I get the sense that like that Logan recognizes what Professor X did for him.
I don't know, like all of the stuff in X-Men 3 where he's like he basically like has to put Jean Grey down. Like I kind of always basically whenever Wolverine does something that's morally correct but difficult, I kind of see Professor X's influence, and I always kind of assume that Professor X was the one who kind of instilled in him that those beliefs or those the willingness to do that sort of thing.
Right.
But this definitely is the one where it was most visible and made the most sense, really. I think.
Well, yeah.
What do you think, Kim?
No, I agree. Like, because, I mean, it was really obvious, like, at the very beginning of this movie, like, Logan was like, who fucking cares about this kid? Like, she's fine. She'll figure it out. Like, she needs to figure her own life out the way I figured my life out. And, you know, Professor X was really the one who was really like, no, like, you have to help her. Like, you know, she's not going to make it on her own. She needs you. You're the one, you know, like, you know, when he says, somebody else will come along, and he's like, we already came along, you know, like, we're the ones who are supposed to do this.
Well, and that's what's beautiful is like when you see the farm family, when the farm family's murdered, and like Wolverine sees like a dead body in the hallway, he like in a lesser movie would have had him go to save the child, because that's like what every movie is, you know, go save the child. And no, he fucking like runs up to go check on Professor X, just leaves the girl to being taken by the bad guys. And I'm like, I thought that was like a weirdly beautiful moment of film. Then I'm like,
oh yeah, when he picks up or like after Professor X has been stabbed by the weapon, and he's like, it wasn't me.
Yes.
Like all he wants to do is let Professor X know that he has had a positive influence on him.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything with Professor X though, like it's just like this whole movie is just like a sad movie. Like everything, like every all of my heroes, when you know, from 17 years ago. Like, it's just sad for them. And
it is sad, but because it's so good. So, like, I walked out of X-Men Origins being like, I'm bummed out. That was not a good experience. It made me upset. I didn't like that. I don't need to see that movie ever again. And I left Logan being like, man, what a tale. What a story I just heard. And it really I cried a couple of times. And, man, what a fine piece of cinema that was.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's sad in like seeing what Professor X became. And like, I read a lot of commenters talk about like on the internet, talk about like their parents and like grandparents with dementia. And like, you know, like this kind of idea of watching like your parents you looked up to, who were like your mentors and your idols and your heroes, just completely deteriorate. You know, like just completely fall apart. And like Professor X just doing that in front of your eyes. I'm like, man, this guy was like the fucking bomb like 10, 15 years ago.
Well, it was like this parallel thing because it was him deteriorating and Wolverine deteriorating at the same time. So like these two, like, I mean, powerhouses, like, you know, just crumbling, you know. And I definitely had that moment, like, towards the end where, you know, after Professor X had died and, you know, Wolverine is the one left standing and he's helping all those kids escape. I'm like, oh, he's going to be the new Professor X and he's going to, like, be a mentor.
But this is a Western. There's no
But no, I was like, oh.
Well, and honestly, Kim, a part of me would have been really disappointed if that had happened because just because Wolverine does not have that capability.
He is in comics, but yeah.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he runs the Jean Grey School for Gifted Youngsters now.
Yeah, so I was like,
he runs the Jean Grey School for Gifted Youngsters. That I'm disappointed to hear that.
Well, especially because like he was always so in love with Jean Grey, and he was always in the Cyclops shadow, and she was always so much more in love with Cyclops, and he was sort of this like third wheel, and I don't know.
It's interesting seeing
sad.
him deal with private school parent bureaucracy.
Well, maybe I need to read the comics then, because, like I say, my understanding of the X-Men only comes from these movies, and so. Blah blah blah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just like, you know, like, yeah, I was like, yeah, like, and that's the thing is the movie gave you like a carrot of like, okay, well, things are fucked. but these kids may get across the border.
Right.
And they may be able to find a good life. And Wolverine can, like, turn this around and be the new Professor X. Like, they gives you that carrot, be like, we're not completely fucked. And then it takes it away from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, these kids are supposed to be fucking mutants. And I know they're new to it. And I know they're beginners. But, like, it took you that long to start getting your heads out of your fucking asses and start using your powers against these people. You're fucking mutants, okay? You have special powers. Use them. Don't just run through the woods.
But I did love that those kids were not, like, specimens. Like
Yeah.
that one little chubber kid.
Oh, little chubby kid. I loved him. He was my favorite. I was like, oh.
Now, were all of those kids the result of the experiments in Mexico, or
Yes.
were some of them just mutants who lived in America and
No,
knew
they
that
were
they needed to get out?
they were all, because basically for some it was kind of implied after X-Men: The Last Stand that the that mutant thing that basically could stop mutants, that shot had basically happened then. Like, and there
Right,
were
because they say in Logan that they started putting that stuff in the drinking water.
Yeah, so there were no new mutants except for the kids in Mexico, and Laura X-23, the girl, she all of her friends that she listed from her picture were there. So all those kids apparently had a much easier time getting to North Dakota. So Richter was one of them. And I know Richter because Richter, like Laura, both premiered in the X-Men Evolution cartoon. Which is from like the early 2000s, late 90s. And so they similarly made the jump like Harley Quinn from the cartoons to the comics to the movies.
That's cool.
But yeah, those were all those kids. And Wolverine is just like, going back to me feeling like the movie's just so sad. Like, he's like this guy who saved the world multiple times, and he's like an Uber driver now.
Yeah, but I don't think he's an Uber driver because that's the only work he could get. I think he's an Uber driver because that's the work that fits what he needs out of life, right?
Right. It just seemed like
that was another political thing that I forgot about. He's driving around those frat boys who are chanting USA at the Mexican people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh. Bleh. I mean, I if only even if him being an Uber driver was just an excuse for him to have that really cool limo, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, the really cool limo. But I mean, it's just like you see, like he's like hitting a lot of booze and painkillers because his healing factor's not working. He needs reading glasses because he can't even know that he's buying the wrong drugs from his dealer. It's sad to me. And then like his claws don't go in all the way anymore because he's old and like the mechanic.
They don't come out all the way either. There's that one horrible moment where he has to grab one on his other hand and pull it out.
Yeah. And like part of it, I know he has the bone claws, but I'm also like, yeah, this is 1970s technology. Like this is not meant to hold up after 50 years. Like I am.
Yeah. Well, and I did kind of like the interesting dynamic sort of earlier on in the film, like when he gets back home to Mexico, and he's with the, sort
Caliban.
of like Caliban, and they sort of have this like marital relationship where Caliban's like, listen, there's some shit we need to talk about. And like sort of have this like married person fight. Like, I don't know why I really liked that. Like
it reminded me kind of, Kim, of maybe like an ex-husband and wife who still are taking care of the same ill relative.
Yes, they're like, or they're like having to like parent or something, where it's like we clearly don't really like each other, like, but we have to figure this out, like. Yeah. We like neither of us are going to turn our backs on the third party, but we really wish we could turn our backs on each other. Yeah.
That was great. I really enjoyed that.
I just love this movie.
It's really good, Vince. It's really, really good.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, like people are starting to ask, like, where's it? Like, I'm asking myself, like, where does it rank in my thinking of superhero movies? And I'm inclined to put it in the top 3. I've only seen it once, so I'm really high on it, and then maybe subsequent rewatches will make me not as high on it. But
I think, Vince, that. I think actually it'll probably stay pretty high because it's not a good superhero movie. It's a really good movie.
Right.
Yeah, and I actually
You know?
was gonna say, like, one of my friends online, Marcellus Coe, he's the Geek Father on the Geek Ventures podcast. He had a very similar commentary that I thought was really interesting, which was that this isn't a typical superhero movie. Like, it's much more of a Western. It's much more of a, like, it has more sort of gravitas and depth than, sort of like the typical action superhero movies have. And so, of course, it's a great movie. Like,
Right.
Well, yeah, and then especially compared to Origins, but also to any of the X-Men movies, it's really unrecognizable stylistically compared to the others.
Right.
Like
It's
not
beautiful. It's so beautifully filmed. I don't know who the cinematographer
really,
was.
Well, but also like I don't know what the budget is, but I would 100% believe that if somebody told me that Logan or that X-Men Origins was, I don't know, $100 million in the budget, and that Logan was $7 million. Like, I would completely believe that.
I believe it's 85 is what I had seen for Logan, which was less than Origins.
Right. Well, I mean, even if it was more, like, Logan, the point of Logan is not to give you 2 hours of spectacle. It's to give you 2 hours of character.
yeah.
And that's what sets it apart so much from these other films where, and even the Marvel movie, especially the Marvel movies, actually, where you're just building up to some enormous 40-minute climax at the end of the movie. Yeah, it's just completely different. And the only thing about the movie that I did not like, and I'm interested to hear what you guys think. I could have done without all of the references to Shane.
Yeah, it was a little on the nose.
A little too much on the nose for me. Yeah. I agree with you, Vince.
I like the idea of Professor X watching Westerns with a kid, though, and being like, this reminds me of my childhood. I mean, it's a little too poetic, because like this movie heavily borrows from Shane and like grand speeches at the end. But like, and that's what I'm thinking about. Like, this movie is probably going to be one of those movies that, like, if my grandmother, I guess my step-grandfather, my grandmother remarried, he loved watching the Western Channel. And, like, every now and then he'd be like, this one's a good one. And would, like, call us into, like, we got to watch this one. Like, he'd watch Westerns all the time. But, like, he knew, like, this is the one you guys need to watch. And I feel like Logan, if that had come on there, he'd be like, this, guys, we need to watch this one. Like, right next to, some of the other ones. And so, like, I like the idea. I like the moment of Professor X being like, this movie I used to watch as a kid. But it's a little on the nose to make it about Shane specifically.
Well, and then they watch like kind of a little bit of it. Like they watch a couple minutes of it, and then she does the speech at the end of the movie, which I thought was beautiful, but like you say, a little on the nose. Like a little like, hey, this is what we're going for.
Right. I can see that. I think the movie was just like so well done that like I don't have a lot to complain about after the first viewing. And that's what I'm worried about with multiple viewings, that I'm going to like have a problem with it. But like the car chases were cool when they dragged that fence backwards and just kept pulling things. I'm like, this is fucking awesome. And then racing towards that train as like a way to end a chase sequence. Like, well, we can't chase them anymore. The train's there. I'm like, I know there's other movies that do this, but I'm like, you can clearly see like this is how we're going to get out of this chase sequence. We just need a fucking race to this train. And like the peril of that, I'm like, it was just really well done, and it was dusty and
being able to sit on the other side of the train and they can see you, like when you have those little gaps in the train cars and you can just look at them like, what are you gonna do? You can't come at me, bro.
And then they got tracked to a casino, which also happened in Origins.
God damn, I totally forgot about that.
It feels like a do-over.
But I did really like them coming into the casino and the little girl being like, we have to get these outfits on these mannequins that are like this family. Like that's a little kid thing to do, you know?
Well, I love it because this whole movie was marketed to me. I thought it was like a complete dystopia, and it's not. It's a recognizable, just shittier. But I mean, it's still Texas. Like, it's not that different than my Texas that I know today.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that too, that it was like the reason that there weren't any more mutants was because like there'd been a war or some nuclear event or something, and that the whole world was a wasteland or whatever. But yeah, it was very different indeed. Where was that casino? Was that like Oklahoma City probably?
It's one of the Oklahoma casinos.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that.
'Cause I was-
Is that
'cause
Harris,
for-
wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because for a little bit I was like, so they went to Vegas, but then now they're in Montana. Well, I guess that could work, but
I think they probably
the
just went straight
Oklahoma makes more
35.
sense.
Yeah.
Straight up by 35 as fast as you can. Yeah, that makes
Probably.
sense. I'll buy that.
That's my guess. They
I'll
went
buy
through Kansas and Nebraska. I'm betting. I love this movie, though. I really
But I remember,
love it.
thinking afterwards, talking with Vince after we left the movie and being like, the points that really got me fucked up were different than the points that got Vince fucked up, which was interesting. You know,
What points got you fucked up? And then I'm gonna share the point that got me fucked
Okay,
up.
good. Because I haven't heard yours. I've heard Vince's. But
you guys go first.
So I remember, that part where the girl, where Wolverine is telling, the little girl, people who I care about end up getting hurt. And she's like, well, then I'll be just fine. And I'm like, oh, that it devastated me. And then, of course, when, Wolverine is standing at the grave of Professor X and he's trying to say something and it's not coming out. And she just takes his hand, and I was like, oh my God, I can't even handle this moment. This is too much emotion for me. And then at the very end, when they kind of close up on Wolverine's grave, I kept thinking because I watched too many of these movies and I read too many of these comic books, that his hand would pop out or he would jump out
or
somehow.
A rock would shake or something.
Yeah, I would have some indication that he was still alive in there, and I wasn't given it, and I was having to leave, being like, oh, it's really not happening. That's not gonna happen. He's really dead.
Yeah. The screening I went to, I saw this movie alone, and the screening I went to, everybody who was there stayed through the end of the credits, and I think I know that we were all waiting for a post-credit scene because that's what happens in superhero movies, and then there isn't one, and everybody was like, he's really dead.
Well, Vince had already Googled, and so as the movie ended, I was expecting us to sit there, and he was like, there's no post-credits, and I was like, what?
I did notice, though, in the credits that Hugh Jackman still has a vocal coach or a dialect coach. Despite playing Wolverine for 17 years, but I guess that's a good deal. Yeah.
Well, maybe it's maybe he met his dialect coach on Kate and Leopold.
Yeah.
And
it's I need to keep this person on staff.
Yeah.
I think something that's always just gets to me is the idea of failing masculinity and decay and despair, just knowing that you're not as good as you were previously. And then being challenged against that. It's a common trope, but it's always something that seems to get to me. And I think the fact that this was baked in, I've seen 9 movies with Wolverine. I've seen him since his birth, essentially, through now. And having a whole history with him and Professor X for 17 years, and all the dream of Professor X, and then him being together in his dream, and then him failing. Is real sad to me. It's just real sad to me. And then him having to live with that, and then seeing Professor X and Wolverine. I don't know, the scene that got me the most was him just carrying Charles up the stairs. I'm just gonna tuck my dad in, and it's just this is just what your life is. And I guess it reminds me of more of my grandparents than anything. And my relationship with my grandparents. It's just sad, and knowing that's on the horizon for our parents and stuff is just another gut punch. They're oh, I'm gonna be Wolverine soon, 5-10 years, and it's just sad to me.
Well, and that's funny because when we first came out of the movie, you had a different answer.
Okay, what I have then?
Which was that you thought you were really fucked up, in the immediate aftermath, not having time to reflect on the kids in the before they left Mexico City, when they did
those kids in the
camera,
hospital.
and you were so fucked up by that, you were so upset,
That's the other side of me being a parent, just seeing,
that you were these kids didn't have a birthday, they didn't have a life, they didn't have real human relationships.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think it right happened because one of our friends they just adopted some young children, and the little girl went in their house and she carried her backpack around with them, that house, for a day. She didn't let any of her property out of her sight.
Yeah.
And so I got that kind of feeling. I'm man, this is just no kid should live like this. This is fucked up. It was real sad. Those poor kids, and those nurses cared so much about those kids.
Yeah.
And that was sad.
Yeah.
That's a good ass movie. Fucking manipulative shit, but good ass movie. I loved Logan. I thought it was real good. I'm gonna watch that one again. I may buy that one on Blu-ray. So I guess the big question is where do we go from here with X-Men movies with Wolverine?
Wait, I have to share when I cried.
Oh, go for
I thought
it.
you were just sad that there was no stinger. Nerd.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had two moments that really messed me up. Not the first chronologically, but the first I'm going to talk about is at the end when Laura takes the cross out of the ground and turns
lays
it into an X. I was raised in a Christian household. My father was a minister for a very long time. Never was shoved down my throat. Everybody's cool that I'm like not super into Christianity at this point. But, I respect symbols and stuff, and I'm sure that there's going to be a cross on my gravestone when I die or whatever. But I've been to a lot of funerals in my life, and never for anyone I cared about.
Right.
That's legit.
Yeah.
And you go to a funeral where like a grandparent who you weren't really close with has died, and the preacher gets up and like he didn't really know her either, and so he's like trying to come up with something to say, and he never really gets there. And
yeah, I just go to instant fuck you mode in that situation.
Right, and really like the biggest feeling that people are feeling is like relief because they were terminally ill and have been lingering for a really long time, and like all of these sorts of things. But like the grief that girl had, and then the demand for respect that turning the cross into an X symbolized for me, like she knew he did not need or want to be buried under a cross.
Yeah. He
needed and wanted to be buried under an X. Mm-hmm. And that sort of like actual follow through and thought like really overwhelmed me. The idea that like, you know what, I'm not like, and the movie didn't really present it like this. I'm putting a lot of my personal stuff on it, but the idea of like, you know what, I'm not going with this go with the flow bullshit. I'm going to do it the way that he would have wanted it to be done. Yeah. Really, really affected me. And then the other one, and this one's like mad personal, and I might cry even talking about it, but when after Wolverine's carried Professor X up and tucked him into bed, and Professor X is like, this is what life is about. This is what a family is, a warm place with food and love and kindness and calmness. And it actually reminded me, Vince, you're going to laugh at this, but a year ago when we all went to, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about Manbration on the air, but a year ago when I went to my first Manbration, and then a bunch of us spent the night at Dylan's house friend of the show's Dylan's house before getting on an early flight back to New York. I was sleeping on the floor in Dylan's office, and I woke up in the morning and I thought, this is really what I want. I want a house and carpet and a family and friends to come over. And that, in that moment, in Dylan's floor, was when I decided to leave New York. And so when Professor X is like, this is what family is, I flashed back to that moment, being in a stranger's bedroom and thinking, this is what I want. This is what I'm shooting for. This is what's been missing from my life. Wow. And so that really messed me up. And it even messed me up even more that Logan wasn't really ready to hear that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those were my two big tearjerker moments.
No, that moment felt very real for me too. Like as somebody who has a difficulty sometimes letting like warmth or goodness or love just like in, to my dark heart, I think it was like a very meaningful thing, where he was like, you should really enjoy this. Like, I know you can't, but I think you should try. And yeah, oh my God, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I feel like, and maybe I'm, I just turned 30, maybe I'm 30 going on 97, but I feel like, kids today are really focused on their Snap Twitters and their chat apps and all of that stuff. And especially now with like the government that we have, it just seems like we're living in a culture of accumulation and possession. And that never has ever made anyone actually happy.
Yeah.
And family and love and togetherness and community always makes people happy. And just seeing that in a big budget movie that's not like based on a true story or starring Sandra Bullock or whatever was like really empowering and really I really enjoed that.
It's a good ass movie.
It's a good ass movie,
Vince.
I mean, like,
it's so
we
good.
spoiled everything. So
if you're listening to this,
so good.
if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Logan, I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what attracted you to this podcast.
That's the thing. Like, I don't understand. Like, this is like nobody could say like I love the Wolverine trilogy.
No. Well, I don't even really think of it as a trilogy. Like, I know that it is, but it kind of is like a de facto trilogy. I kind of think of it as just like, oh, these are the X-Men movies that Wolverine is in.
Yeah, that are focused on Wolverine. Like, it's so weird though. Like, I mean, like, and I guess that's the way to view it because they don't really match up in a series like both chronologically. My question is if you haven't seen any of the X-Men movies, does Logan make enough sense to you? Like
I don't know because I watched like the X-Men cartoon series. I read the X-Men comic books. Like because I watched the X-Men movies, so I can't imagine
because basically like the only thing that you really need to know is that like Logan and Professor X have had like a long history together,
right? And he's like a mentor figure.
Yeah, and the movie brushes over like I found you at cage fighting 20 years or 30 years ago, and that's it. Like that's really all you need to know.
But part of me, like, knowing Wolverine's background is like, but did you really rescue him? Like, you took him and you made him, like, fall in love with Jean Grey, who was never going to love him the way that she loved Cyclops. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, like, maybe it would have been better if he was still cage fighting.
She's good in Wolverine, by the way. The Wolverine 2 movie.
Yeah, she is.
Oh, she is really good in Wolverine. That's a really tough question, Vince, because, like, I would not tell somebody, well, you need to see these 2 or 3 or 4 or however many X-Men movies before you see Logan, because I don't think the movies really set Logan up necessarily, but you definitely do need to know that like Wolverine used to be a stone cold badass who was not afraid of death, and that Professor X used to be the most powerful mutant in the entire planet who could take over everybody's mind at once if he wanted to. Like, right. You know what I mean? But like, I wouldn't say, oh, go see the first 2 X-Men and then the Wolverine and then you're all set up. Like, I don't know. I don't know
if you need the movies or if you just need to have grown up, like, you know, seeing Jackman and Stewart together since, you know, I was 15. Or, you know, knowing that relationship from the X-Men video game, like in 89, 90. You know, like that's the kind of thing, you know, like knowing that this is the end for Wolverine. I think it's not because there's comics and stuff. Like, but living with that, like a whole life of that, knowing that this is now the end is like very important to me. And I think, like, missing that, does the movie have as much of an impact?
Right. And so, like, for me, the way that I access that, because, like I say, I haven't played the video games or seen the television show or read the comics or whatever. I've only seen the movies. For me, the thing was Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman have been doing this together for almost 20 years.
Right.
And now they're saying goodbye. I mean, like, I don't follow sports, but when Kobe Bryant retired, I got upset because he'd been doing something really well for 20 years.
Yeah, we're Spurs fans, so we don't like Kobe. But Tim Duncan did the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Tim Duncan. There, you can edit that out into where I said.
He's not from LA. He just doesn't know sports. He doesn't know.
I don't know sports. I've never even been to LA. But my point remains that like that is where the relationship came from me. Was that like these 2 actors who met 20 years ago and probably were like, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is going to do anything. Like, this is a weird movie. Like, the only comic book movie I've ever seen was Batman, and Tim Burton's not here, and I don't know. And then they kept working and learned and grew together and changed and bonded or maybe didn't bond or whatever. Like, that was kind of my entry point to that. So maybe I would just recommend it to people who are huge fans of Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart. But if you're huge fans of those actors, you've already seen these movies. So.
Right.
I don't know. It's tough. That's a tough question, Vince. That's a tough question.
So are we ready to close the book on Logan before we talk about where do we go from here?
Yeah, I think so. Right, Kim?
I do just want to say one last tiny thing. I want to say I'm really excited that the female Wolverine has the toe claws. I don't know why. That just made me really happy. It was just exciting.
She's had those since the cartoon.
I know, but it's just cool, cool, right? I don't know.
Well, it's extra. It's like, oh, this is an extra power we didn't know had, and she's only got 2 claws too.
Yeah.
I actually really liked that. There's something about the 2 claws that to me seems more like refined somehow.
Yeah, but a little more
Like,
feral, a little more dangerous.
Yeah.
Actually, I was thinking like a little bit more designed, a little more efficient.
Yeah. Well, because she has the 2 claws in her hands, and then she has the 1 in her feet, and so it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing when I saw her design for the first time, like in '04. I'm like, this is a cool design.
Hell yeah.
Like a little girl with that. It's scary.
It's fucking cool.
Yeah. She's a good actor, that Daphne.
She was so good.
Yeah.
I mean, unreal.
So where do we go from here? They've been talking about either recasting Wolverine, or just maybe continuing on with Laura and her own series of movies, or do you just cut it off here and say we're done?
I think Laura definitely needs more movies. I have some thoughts on future male Wolverines.
Okay.
I have 2 people I would like to see in this role.
Okay.
One is Tom Hardy.
He's taking over Mad Mix, and now he's going to take over Hugh Jackman's role?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like he's like a brawny dude, but he could say bub and it wouldn't feel weird. Like, I don't know. I like him.
He's also about a foot shorter, so that would probably be like closer to the comics and the cartoons and stuff.
Yes, exactly. And then another person I really want to see in this role is Jensen Ackles.
From Supernatural. He still
I don't know who that is.
He's the rogue brother from Supernatural. It's that's a good show. What did I really want him to be? He played Jason Todd in the Batman cartoons, and he was really good at that. Oh, cool. He's young. He's good. He needs to be a superhero of some capacity.
Yeah.
He's good. So those are your two.
Those are my 2 Wolverines.
Yeah. That's not bad.
I can imagine.
I don't know. Yeah. I think I would just let it lie fallow for a while. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Vince, because so earlier I was talking about how I always knew that comics were weird and had different continuities and blah, 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 blah. And part of that was reinforced by the Batman movies of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Where, because I discovered Batman and James Bond at about the same time, and so I was like, oh, this is just how these things go sometimes. It's like this guy does a couple movies, that guy does a couple movies, this guy comes back and does a movie, and then he goes away, and then whatever. So like this guy's Batman now, but and this is a problem that the Marvel movies are coming up hard on too. Like, once you've established this guy is this character for 17 years.
Yeah.
Like, it would be tough if even someone I love as much as Tom Hardy showed up and was like, I'm Wolverine now. And this movie, like, unless they did something where it was like, this is a completely different universe and a different continuity or something like that, like, it would just be, it'd be weird. Like, it's going to be weird when Iron Man is played by somebody else who still says that their name is Tony Stark. Like, it's going to be really weird.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you, yeah.
It may need to happen that the X-23 girl has some movies on her own first, you know?
Yeah.
Like, she continues it on, that way, it kind of, like, allows that time, but we still get Wolverine in a way that's palatable.
And technically, Jackman, if he had a good enough script, could show up anytime between now and 2029.
Yeah. Although, I don't know if he can continue to stay in that kind of shape.
That's the thing.
God damn.
He's been ripped since 2000.
Well, and I was looking online, and they have entire websites dedicated to, like, the Wolverine diet and, like, what crazy shit he has to do to stay in that shape. And it's like, he's on this weird diet where he only eats for 8 hours a day, and then 16 hours a day he's fasting. So he eats all of his calories in an 8 hours period, and he has to eat between like 4,000 and 6,000 calories. But all he eats basically is like chicken breasts, spinach, and sometimes brown rice. That's it.
No.
Wow.
Like, no fucking wonder he was stinky. Like, when you met him, like his sweat stank. Yeah.
He's like probably like, I can't waste time riding in a car.
It's like all protein.
Yeah, I'm sure that was part of it, Vince, was like, if I don't get my 30 minutes of cardio in right now, my entire molecular structure is going to fall apart.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
and he
'cause-
has these like incredibly regimented workouts that are insane, and like I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't even do that for like 3 days.
Yeah.
Like he's done it for 17 years.
Oh,
nobody-
I for Lent. This because I'm not a Christian. I'm totally observing Lent. I pulled up one of those like 30-day push-up crunch challenge things, and I keep having to reset and doing day 1 again.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Like-
Yes, I've done that.
Shoot. Yeah, like I'm just like nobody looks the same that they did between the ages of 30 and 47.
Mm-mm.
Like that's not when you stay ripped. Like your metabolism goes to shit at that point.
Well, and I even saw I saw Logan, and then I was like, man, like Hugh Jackman's really holding up. He looks great. And then I read some article, and there was a picture of him with clean shaven and no gray in his hair because that's makeup. And I was like, oh my God, he's 10 years younger than I thought he was when I was like, oh, he's holding up pretty well. Like this asshole's gorgeous.
It's amazing.
He's so I love his look in Logan.
Yeah.
Like the kind of like fucked up suit with a lot of blood on it, and then he kind of moves to like a cowboy suit for the back half of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good ass.
He's a
movie.
good-looking man. You
do,
can't say he's
like-
not good-looking.
I do want a bunch of gifs of him, like when he's struggling to walk, like just like in the Logan movie, like when he's like clearly falling apart and he's kind of like forcing himself to walk along, and he's like, ugh, like gonna die. And I'm like, I want gifs of those so I can put like Mondays be like and stuff like that.
That's funny.
So get on that internet.
Come on, internet. It's been what? How long since this Logan movie's come out?
4 weeks?
It
4
should
or
be
5
out by
weeks, yeah.
now. This is longer than I usually wait for my memes.
So, I think we're probably ready to close the book on this episode. If you want to hear about the comic book that this was very, very loosely based on, you can check out our Some of My Friends Read Comics episode about Old Man Logan, which basically just took the concept that Wolverine is old from that comic and went here in a much better way than the comic. But we recapped that about a month ago on Some of My Friends Read Comics. We have not covered the Origin comic, which was basically written in defiance of the movies, because the movie said, we're going to show Wolverine's origin. I don't give a shit if it's been in the comics or not. And the comics were like, fine, we'll fucking write it then. So
Here's your fucking origin story.
So there's that if you ever want to check that out. And next month, we're going to be covering The Fast and the Furious versus The Fate of the Furious. So that should be covering the whole Fast and Furious series a little bit in there to see how much. My big challenge is how many people on the Fate of the Furious poster were in the first movie. I don't know. We'll find out.
Oh God, like one?
Vin Diesel, maybe Michelle Rodriguez. I don't even know if Jordana Brewster's in this movie.
Dude, I've not seen a Fast and Furious movie since Tokyo Drift.
What? You have missed out.
You missed.
I know.
5
and
is
so
the
what-
greatest action movie of this decade.
And so I went to see Logan, and the trailer for Fast 8 or whatever they're
The
calling it
Fate
was
of
there.
the Furious, F8.
God. Was out, and Vin Diesel has been taken over by an evil clone, and The Rock is in these movies all of a sudden, and I was just
No,
like...
The Rock has been there.
The
You've
Rock's-
missed
this
the
is
movie.
This is the 4th movie with The Rock.
I believe you, and they've got a tank, and there's a submarine, and I
And
was like...
Charlize Theron is like an
the-
evil villain. Yes.
The last time I checked in with these people, they were street racers, and so I need to catch up on the last 10 years of Fast and Furious because I have no idea what's going on.
So Tokyo Drift ends up happening halfway through Fast and Furious 7, if that helps you out.
I did read something about like the crazy, ridiculous continuity of how the third movie actually takes place in like the future somehow,
In the
in
seventh
what
movie.
at the time was the future, but now I think is the recent past, and blah. I got to get into that.
So check that out next month. Kimberly and Michael and I will all be covering that. It comes out.
Yes.
They've staked their claim on Easter weekend now, so those movies just always come out on Easter weekend. It's a good 3-day weekend. They'll make a lot of
Is
money.
that for real?
Yeah.
Now, there's going to be a new Aliens movie coming out.
Yeah, that's
right near my birthday.
Yeah, so we'll be covering
So-
that in June.
Hells yeah.
The Alien versus Alien Covenant will be
I
in
am
June
down.
because me and my friend Michael will be covering the Zelda series in May. So if
Yeah,
you
I
don't
don't
have
wanna be on that.
if you don't have a Nintendo Switch, play Zelda. Kimberly will not be on that episode.
Oh, that sounds fun.
So that's just our look ahead. And if anybody wants to talk about the American Pie movies with me in July, I'm looking.
I'd be down for that.
Okay. Well, there we go. Okay, so thank y'all so much. Thank you, Sam. This was a lot of fun talking about Wolverine.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kimberly, as always, for watching a terrible movie with me and a good movie with me.
I thought they were both great movies, but I know I'm in the minority in that.
I know.
And I'm okay with it.
You loved Kingdom of the Crystal Skull also.
Yeah, I did. I have no reservations about saying that either.
Hey, you know what, Kim? I like that movie too. I thought it made perfect sense for Indiana Jones to be fucking around with aliens in the 1950s.
I agree. Thank you.
So on that note, we'll see y'all again next month with The Fate of the Furious. Bye.
I'm at the gym doing weights each day. Hugh has got to look buff, they say. Must I lie? I cannot eat this ice cream anymore. I need a body people can adore. I gave up junk food, that I know. I made that bargain long ago. And all my snacks and crisps, they're gone. And now this Wolverine can go on. Who am I? Who am I? I'm Wolverine. This is gonna work. And so, my friend, you see it's true. I am an X-Man who isn't blue. Who am I? I am Wolverine. I haven't got it today. No.
At the end there.
Too early.
A round of applause.
There it is.